Welcome all hunters, anglers, trappers, and shooters to the only fish and wildlife conservation podcast that goes behind the scenes of the business of conservation, the Connecting with Conservation podcast. Our podcast is hosted by John Gassett from the Wildlife Management Institute and Jim Cucaruto of the Outdoor Stewards of Conservation Foundation. John and Jim will talk with experts from all sectors of the conservation arena about their passion for conserving the great outdoors. So please welcome our hosts of the Connecting with Conservation podcast, John and Jim.
Welcome to another episode of Connecting with Conservation. I'm John Gassett with the Wildlife Management Institute. I'm here with my co-host, Jim Cucaruto with the Outdoor Stewards for Conservation Foundation, and Neil Paul, the Executive Director of VisitAnderson.com. Visit Anderson, sorry.
That's okay. Thank you for the opportunity. This is going to be a lot of fun and a topic that I think we should all be thinking about and talking about.
Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about how what you do with Visit Anderson relates to fishing in the outdoors and the conservation community in general.
So I'm the executive director at Visit Anderson, like you said. We're the tourism destination marketing organization for Anderson County in upstate South Carolina. Destination marketing organization is just a fancy word for I'm the tourism director for the county. And we're essentially what we do, our office at Visit Anderson, we're the marketing and promotions arm for the city of Anderson and Anderson County. And one of our, to me, it's actually our greatest asset in our community is Lake Hartwell. If you know anything about Lake Hartwell, it's a Corps of Engineer lake in the northwest corner of South Carolina, 962 miles of shoreline. More shoreline than the coast of California. I tell people it's 56,000 acres and about 180 feet deep at its deepest point. Blueback herring lakes, full of spotted bass, largemouth bass, stripers, the whole shooting match there. And we have a facility in Anderson County, Green Pond Landing. Anderson County developed the Green Pond Landing. That's a whole nother story. And podcast for another time. But Green Pond Landing is a 33-acre facility on the shores of Lake Hartwell. We have 200 paved spaces for trucks and trailers. We have another 100 for spectator parking. We've got the deepest launch lanes on Lake Hartwell, roughly 10,000 square feet of dock space. It's an ADA compliant facility. And we've got an amphitheater that seats about 1,300 people. So it's one of, and these aren't my words. These are the words that come from other tournament organizations and things. Fishing tournaments are a tremendous economic driver for our community. And Green Pond will turn 10 years old in December of this year and already generated over $100 million in economic impact for the upstate of South Carolina. So the tournament business is obviously really good to us. You know, some of the, not to steal his thunder, but, Glenn Hughes mentioned here at ICAST this week that more people fished in the past year than played golf and tennis combined. So obviously, we have golf courses in Anderson County and we have tennis courts, but we have more people fishing than we have doing the other things. So for us, that's a resource that we tap into from a tourism and economic standpoint. And we host a lot of tournaments. I manage the schedule for that facility and book those events, and that's in a nutshell what I do and why I'm here.
That's very cool. And you mentioned Glenn Hughes, so we're here at ICAST in Orlando at the American Sport Fishing Association, big trade show that they hold every year. And one of the cool things about it is, we're sitting down having breakfast. I never met you, but hey, what do you do? And you got right into it. Lake Hartwell, I'm in Connecticut, but I've heard of how great a fishery is in it. And then I mentioned, hey, I'm with conservation organization. And you say, you do something really cool for conservation. You got a checklist that you provide. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, we started it. In fact, I was telling somebody this morning, it's kind of my new crusade. And it's not that we've just started conservation. We're trying to be more conservation minded. We realize with us in hosting tournaments and hosting events, and again, we're one of 6 counties that touch Lake Hartwell. Well, when you have the largest facility on the lake, I tell people sometimes, I think we all go back to when we were in college and we went to a party, or I mean, John, you mentioned going to
University
of Georgia, so you know what I'm talking about. Everybody goes out on Thursday night, and you always gravitate towards the best party, the best band, or the best looking girl in the room, or whatever. And that's kind of what Green Pond is for us. So when you're looking at the lake, there's 6 counties and 2 states that touch the lake. We seem to be the best band in the room. We're the best looking girl in the room. We're whatever we are that make people look at us. So we felt like we kind of had a platform there to be a leader in conservation. So we've done some pretty cool events with our youth. We did and the folks at AFCO worked really close with us. We did a trash tournament a couple years ago, and did one of our local tournament directors brought in some industrial scales, and then we did a blast off, we did a launch, and we conducted it just like you would a 5 bass tournament, but the kids went out and picked up trash and came in, and we did a weigh-in where we weighed the garbage. So we've done things like that, and we wanted to dive in a little better to really set an example. We've got some, I think sometimes somebody once told me you learn more from one mistake than 10 victories, and so just over time and watching our resource and experience some things, we haven't had a major catastrophe or anything like that. Just we always felt that we could be better, and so we started looking at ways to be better. And so we had there's 52 weeks in a year, and last year we had 52 events booked at Green Pond last year, and it come out to be 1 a week. And now we didn't have everything once a week. There were weeks we had 2 events. There were weeks we had 3 things within a given week. And it's not all large stuff. It's events and things of all sizes. So one of the things we did this year when we started in January was anybody that booked an event with us this year, we required a written conservation plan for, and that was if the folks at Bass or Major League Fishing came to town, we asked that of them. If Uncle Joe that does the Tuesday nighters, if he wanted a date at Green Pond, well, he had to present a written conservation plan. We wanted to see, and the things we're looking for are like, what kind of weigh-in bags do you have? What kind of, because there's a difference, in what kind of bags you have. We're looking at weigh-in bags. We're looking at things like how many tanks do you have? How are you getting your water? What are you putting in the water? If it's, as you get into the warmer months, are you using ice? Are you not using ice? And so we developed a checklist kind of from seeing a need. And then as we got into the summer months, we actually put a little bag together. I'd share one with you. I've left them in the room today, so I'll have them with me. I won't make that mistake tomorrow. But we had little they're little quart Ziploc bags is what they are. But within those bags we have information that we've gathered from some fishery biologists and conservation directors of the other organizations, and we've in each bag, when we have a tournament at the registrations or blast off, we give everybody that's going out one of these bags, and that bag contains a card with 10 instructions for better fish care. It's everything from how to add ice, how to change the temperature in your live well, how to not change it too much, right? Because they want
so you don't shock them.
You want to fluctuate that water temperature within 10 degrees. So the guy that gets that 8-pound bag of ice out of his cooler and dumps it in there, that's probably not your best step. And
unless you're going to eat it.
That's right. but that's what we've learned, right? We've learned this through research and through our conversations and asking questions. So there's steps like that on there. There's a card with instructions on how to properly fizz a fish. We include a needle, a fizz needle in that bag. We have a local gentleman, David Stout, who runs a Sunday tournament trail in our community called the 5 Alive series, and he named it after a live well treatment that he developed with a biologist from Southern Miss University, and it's a really, really good live well treatment called 5 Alive. And so we get a sample bottle of that from him, and we put that in all those bags. So when an angler goes out on the water, he's got the tools that he needs to make sure that he's properly caring for the resource. And maybe it's something that they've already had in their bag. Maybe it's a tournament angler that already has something like that. We're just reinforcing what everybody should be doing.
Right. So what's interesting to me is, a lot of people from the outside looking in don't equate conservation or hunting, fishing with tourism. But in a previous life, I was the director of Kentucky Fish and Wildlife, and we were actually in the tourism cabinet, not the natural resource cabinet. Folks think about Kentucky and they think about bourbon and racehorses as tourism drivers. Yes, exactly. But we were always outdoor recreation, specifically hunting, fishing, and boating, were always neck and neck with racehorses and bourbon in Kentucky. So it is a major tourism driver. People buy gas and they stay in rooms and they have to eat meals. So it's a huge driver.
So, and it's funny you bring up Kentucky Lake, because what I'm about to tell you actually came from Kentucky Lake. I had an opportunity about 8 years ago to go up and spend some time. There was a large high school event at Kentucky Lake out of Paris, and I went up there and got to spend a few days, and Gary Mason, everybody knows Gary Mason, Bethel University. Gary, I probably felt sorry for me and put me in the truck, and we rode around for a couple hours and spent some time together. But one of the things, and if you know Gary, you don't don't talk to Gary, you listen to Gary. But one of the things he told me that I've never forgotten. He said, when he said I worked with the folks here, helped with the tourism folks with coming up with kind of an action plan for this. He said, but they were hosting tournaments here every week. And when Kentucky Lake was at its peak, and he said we'd have a tournament one week, we'd have 200 boats one week, we'd have 180 boats the next week, there'd be 225 the next week. And he said the tourism folks are reporting this information, and people just became numb to the fact, it's just another big tournament on Kentucky Lake. He said, so I helped them, and we did some research to really dive in and find out what a visiting truck and boat meant to that community. And he said, so then once we were able to put a dollar amount on that truck and boat, then when we reported that number, then people could see the dollar amount that was associated with that truck and boat with a Michigan tag on it, parked down at the Paris Landing State Park. And all of a sudden, they started understanding how the tournament scene benefited the community. And so I took that back to Anderson and worked with a couple of our surrounding communities, and we did the same thing. And we've done some additional research to kind of, that number's grown, but the average in a rough number, and again these numbers are fairly conservative, but we estimate that the average visiting truck and boat to our community is worth about $275 a day. So when you start looking at those numbers, and for example, we just had TBF, the Bass Federation, we just did their high school world championships last month, had 437 boats. And when you take now you start doing that math, and they're there 6, 7, 8, some of them even 10 days. In fact, the kids that won the event, we hosted this event for the first time in 2021, and the kids that won this year finished 13th in 2021 as freshmen. And we announced during that week that the 2024 event was coming back. We exercised the rollover year in the contract. And so the kids' parents brought them back a week each year for the past 2 summers. They vacationed in Anderson to better learn the lake. And then they won it this year as seniors. So it's a really cool story, but it just also goes to show you kind of the economics part of it. From these kids came here and had a great experience in our community. The parents had a great experience in our community. The kids experienced some success. And then as a result of it, it was vacation the next year, vacation the next year, and vacation the third year with the competition in it. So that's a guest and a visitor that we'll get back again.
Yeah, and so that's overall the community, but focusing on just the fishing industry and how that gives back to the state agencies, which we'll talk about too. I'm just calculating 52, tournaments, 200 boats a tournament, so you got thousands of anglers coming in, non-resident anglers that are all buying a fishing license. They're all putting motorboat fuel in their boats, right? Motorboat fuel's a big excise tax. They all have rods, reels, lures, a lot of rods, reels, and lures that they're buying. paying that tax on. So they are primary funders. If you're an angler, you know there's no doubt about it. You're a primary funder of conservation in America, and that's where that money gets filtered back to the state DNRs. And I know you said you work with South Carolina DNR.
South Carolina DNR has been a tremendous partner of ours, and and again, I mentioned this in the beginning. It's a whole nother conversation for another day. But Green Pond Landing was kind of was birthed through an issue back. It was part of the deal with the Clean Waters deal, and settlement monies and stuff came into our county, and there was an opportunity to build a facility that would benefit the community recreationally, but also we saw it as a driver for tourism as well. The county did, and hats off to our county leadership, because they've invested the funding to be able for us to have what I call a Yankee Stadium type facility, and then give us the resources to be able to go out and recruit events and bring in events and things like that. But then also, on our end of it, we have a job to do too, and that job is to protect the resource, because Lake Hartwell is 56,000 acres and more shoreline in the coast of California. It draws an average of 10.5 million. These are Corps of Engineer numbers, not my numbers, but it draws an average of 10.5 million visitors a year. And to put some perspective on that, if it were a national park, it'd be the second most visited national park in America, behind the Great Smoky Mountains. And so we have a job to do, and it's not just picking up trash on the shoreline. It's not just making sure people have a fizz needle when they go out in the boat. It's making sure people are educated and they understand the importance of conservation, and understanding that proper catch and release, proper if you are going to harvest fish, there's a right way and a wrong way to do it, and just being mindful of that sort of thing. And then, because we have a job not only to one of the big things here this week has been talking about take a buddy fishing, take your daughter fishing, take your child, your grandchild, get more people fishing, get more people engaged in the sport. But we also have a responsibility to educate those people that there's a right way to go about getting involved in the sport too.
Sure. Well, in almost every state agency out there, the connection to anglers, boat anglers, and the water is the boat ramp. So every state's using sport fish restoration dollars, excise tax dollars to build boat ramps. But if that wasn't available, sure, states could probably do carry-in sites and even single slab push-ins for single lane ramps. But tournament ramps are a different thing. They're incredibly expensive, but they're necessary to put that many boats on the water. And without sport fish restoration dollars, excise tax dollars, I'm not sure there'd be a tournament scene in a lot of these lakes, because you got to be able to get the folks into the water quickly.
Absolutely. Quickly, efficiently, safely, and for us our facility just having the deepest launch lanes on the lake. We get traffic now, 2008, I think, and I missed that. I got to Anderson in 2010, but in 2008, when there was a lot of severe drought in the south. I think Lake Hartwell was at its lowest, and it was, and I know and I forget what the record low number was, but we were, if we had that drought status today, Green Pond and the deepest launch lanes on the lake, we could still get boats in the water, which is really important. So it's the conservation part of, for us, it's we've the written conservation plan, it's worked this year, believe it or not. We've had actually a couple people that chose not to come back and do tournaments with us because they didn't want to invest the time and the resources on their end to make sure they were doing it the right way. And there's going to be people, there's going to be people like that, and you have to do the best job you can to educate. But for those that have continued to have events with us, they've been very appreciative that there's an accountability process in place to again make sure that we're taking care of our resource. You mentioned South Carolina DNR. They come out. They have an office right there in Clemson, which is just 11 miles up the road from Anderson County, and they come down and help us out at some of our events. Sometimes they'll send staff to oversee fish care and fish release operations, and they've been a great partner of ours. They've invested money, I think, to date There's been right at $9 million invested in Green Pond in the development, from everything from the bathroom facility to the amphitheater and the parking places and the dock space. So DNR's been a big part of that process. So it's fun to have those guys come out with us as well and do what they do at a tournament, which is, obviously oversee the fish care aspect and to make sure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to do to protect the fishery and the resources. But it's also good for them to come out and see what they've invested in.
Well, talking about fish care, like I'm embarrassed to say I've never heard of fizzing, because I don't fish deep water. So tell us a little bit about what fizzing is, if I'm saying that even right.
Well, and I'm going to give you just the overview. I mean, it's much more scientific than I'm even able to sit here and talk about. But it's, ultimately what happens is fish that are caught deep and brought quickly up through shallow water and brought to the boat, or their air bladder swells because of the change in depth and the change that they pressure. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. The pressure change, and so they'll swell up. You take that fish, you take it off the hook, you put it in your live well, or if it's not a measurable fish in a tournament, you toss it back in the water. Well, that pressure change has forced his air bladder to swell. Well, he just lays in the water on his side, and he can't get upright like he's supposed to, and ultimately it's harmful to the fish, and ultimately leads to loss of fish. And so what fizzing does is you take that fish, and there's gills. You go behind the gill, you count back a few spots there, and then you inject this fizz needle into the air bladder. And what you do is you bleed the air off the fish. And I equate it sometimes to like burping a baby. When you feed a baby, you'll burp the baby, and so you bleed that air out of the fish, and you can watch them. I mean, you'll take a fish laying on his side in a live well, and you can fizz him, and he'll turn and he'll set right up. And something I learned, see, we trained some of our park rangers at Green Pond to be able to fizz fish on site. So when we had some that come in and we're putting them in the tanks and they're laying on their side, we had rangers there on site that could fizz fish, and we were saving some of them. But then in even further talking to biologists and conservation directors that we kind of rely on for information, they said, well, if you're fizzing fish at the ramp, oftentimes that's too late. They need to be fizzed on the water in the boat when they're caught. So that's what led us to then providing an instructions card, fizz needle, things like that, so you can do your part when you're on the water, so we're not having to do it when it gets to the ramp. So that's the Cliff Notes version.
Well, I appreciate that.
If you're a scuba diver, you're familiar with scuba diving, it's basically the bends. You're breathing pressurized air at depth. When you come up too quick, those air bubbles in your blood expand, and it messes with your joints, and your blood, you'll burst blood vessels, and it can kill you.
Well, Neil, I got a program name for you, Burp the Bass. You can put stickers out there and all that stuff. So I like that. But I think we're kind of wrapping up here toward the end. But you had one last question?
Well, yeah. First of all, thank you for doing this, for doing what you're doing responsibly, because, as you know, tournaments can be controversial. People see lots of fish coming in. Sometimes they see fish floating into water at the ramp. Doing it the right way means that we'll continue to do that in the future. And, but public pressure, being what it is, if we don't do it the right way, if we don't lead from the front, those tournaments could go away just like other things have. So we appreciate you taking the lead on that and doing things the right way in a conservation approach, so that people can still recreate and enjoy themselves and spend money in the communities, but protect the resource for the next group of folks that want to come in and catch them.
It is. Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to do this and to talk about this. But it's not only important, in kind of the next steps for us. It's not only important to educate and prepare the people that you're bringing in to your community, but we also, where it doesn't impact tourism dollars, it impacts really the resource, is we've got a responsibility to educate our local anglers as well too. They have a big responsibility and a big part in this as well. So that's to me is equally important when you're talking about the resource.
Very cool. I learned a lot today. Where can folks learn more about, the tournaments in Anderson County and all the stuff that you have to offer?
So yeah, visit Anderson. Our website is visitanderson.com. Our social media is really simple. Visit Anderson SC for South Carolina. Check us out. We have a calendar of events that we are very active with on our website. We're very active in our social media, and you can always reach out and contact us. Generic info at visitanderson.com, or you can reach out to me directly at Neil, Neil, at visitanderson.com, and we're always glad to help. And if you're ever in the community, by all means, look us up, stop in. Green Pond Landing and Event Center, they have a Facebook page and a lot of tournament information and historical information and things there. That's kind of a fun follow. And again, in addition to saying thank you to you guys for this opportunity, just want to again say thank you to Anderson County, because, like I said, our county leadership and the folks in our county have our leadership's really invested a lot to create something that's reached far greater than our county lines. I mentioned the high school event that we had last month. We had anglers in our community from 41 states and 2 countries. We had Zimbabwe sent 6 teams, 6 kids, 3 teams over to fish with us. So it truly is a international destination for fishing, and we're extremely proud of it.
Well, Neil, thank you for taking some time to talk with us. And to our followers, thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the woods or on the water.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Connecting with Conservation podcast. Please do us a favor and tell your buddies, friends, family, and others about what you've learned here today. If you like what you heard, come on back anytime and listen to another episode of the Connecting with Conservation podcast.